So, India has kicked off one of the most ambitious educational reforms in its entire history. We're talking about the National Education Policy of 2020. And this isn't just a little update, it's a complete reimagining of the system, designed to get a whole generation ready for the 21st century. So, let's really dig into what this blueprint for India's future is all about.
You might be asking, why such a massive change? Well, it all starts with this number, 5 crore. That's over 50 million young kids in elementary school who can't do the basics: reading, writing, simple math. The policy doesn't just call this a problem, it calls it what it is, a full-blown learning crisis.
And the policy itself doesn't pull any punches. This quote really sets the tone. It frames the whole effort not as a nice to have, but as something that absolutely had to be done. The old system just wasn't working, and the gap between where students were and where they needed to be was just too big to ignore anymore.
Okay, so with a problem that big, you can't just slap a Band-Aid on it, right? The solution had to be just as massive, just as comprehensive. And that's exactly what the National Education Policy, or NEP 2020, is: a radical redesign, a whole new architecture for learning in India. All right, so before we jump into the shiny new blueprint, we've got to understand the old one and why it just wasn't cutting it anymore, especially when it comes to how young children actually learn. And here it is, the big architectural shift. You can see it right there. The old 10+2 model didn't even start formal schooling until a kid was 6, which meant it was missing out on the most critical years for brain development. The new 5+3+3+4 structure fixes that. It brings early childhood care and education right into the fold, recognizing that if you want to solve that learning crisis, you have to start way, way earlier. This chart breaks it down beautifully. You can see how the new system is actually built around the child. The foundational stage for the little ones from 3 to 8 is all about learning through play and activities. Then you move to the preparatory stage, where things get a bit more interactive in the classroom. By the middle stage, we're talking hands-on experiential learning. And finally, the secondary stage opens everything up to multidisciplinary study and real critical thinking. Every single stage is designed for how a child's brain develops.
So yeah, this is really the heart of the whole thing, a strategic rebuild of the entire educational journey, starting with a foundation that is rock solid. But a blueprint is just a piece of paper without the builders, right? And the policy is crystal clear on this. None of these reforms can happen without teachers. They are the absolute center of this transformation, the architects who are going to bring this vision to life. So the big question is, how is the policy actually going to support them? Well, it lays out some really specific, concrete steps. Teachers are going to get at least 50 hours of professional development every single year. Promotions are going to be based on merit, not just how long you've been there. That disruptive practice of constantly transferring teachers, that's being stopped. And maybe most importantly, they're cutting down on the administrative busy work, giving teachers more freedom and more time to, actually teach. And look, that 50 hours of development, it's not some boring one-and-done workshop. It's about making continuous professional development, or CPD, a core part of being a teacher. It's a real commitment to always be learning the latest techniques and ideas, making sure our educators are always at the top of their game. When you put it all together, it's pretty clear. This is all about investing in our teachers, because they're the ones who are truly the architects of our next generation. Okay, let's switch gears to another huge challenge the policy is trying to tackle: actually keeping kids in school. This chart shows a pretty stark reality. See how enrollment is high in the middle grades? But then look at that steep drop. By the time you get to grades 11 and 12, almost half the students have dropped out. It's often called the leaky pipeline. So, to plug that leaky pipeline, the policy sets this, well, incredibly ambitious goal: 100% enrollment all the way from preschool through secondary school by the year 2030. The mission isn't just to get every kid into a classroom, but to make sure they stay there and finish their education. So how on earth do you do that? Well, the policy gets really smart here. It zooms in on what it calls socioeconomically disadvantaged groups, or SEGs. It's a broad term that basically acknowledges that different kids face different hurdles, whether it's because of their gender, where they live, their family's income, or a disability. And the strategy for helping these students is really a two-pronged attack, if you will. First, you provide the right infrastructure. We're talking safe schools, reliable transportation, and hostels, which are so important for keeping girls in school. And second,
You create a system that actually tracks every single student and their progress, so you can step in and help before they drop out. And listen, these aren't just vague promises. The policy gets super specific with concrete initiatives. There's a new gender inclusion fund just for girls and transgender students. There's the creation of special education zones in parts of the country that need the most help. And there's a huge push to make every school building and every book fully accessible for kids with disabilities. So, what's the big idea behind all of this? It's simple, really, but also pretty profound. To build an education system that is truly for everyone, one that's equitable and inclusive right from the start. Okay, so we've got a new structure, we've got a plan to get every kid in the door, but what are they actually gonna learn? Now, this for me is maybe the most exciting part. The core idea is to shift away from rote learning, just memorizing facts to pass an exam, and toward real, genuine conceptual understanding. The whole curriculum is being redesigned to be way more flexible and multidisciplinary. What does that mean? It means no more of these rigid walls between arts and sciences. A student can literally study physics and fashion design. They can start taking vocational courses and doing internships as early as grade 6. They'll get coding introduced in middle school. The focus is squarely on the skills that matter today: creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, all taught through hands-on learning. And when you zoom out, the ultimate goal is crystal clear. It's about moving beyond just churning out students who are good at taking tests. The real aim is to nurture holistic, well-rounded people, individuals who are creative, ethical, and ready for whatever the future throws at them. So really, this whole philosophy is about completely redefining what education is for. It's about fostering a love of learning that's meant to last a lifetime, not just until the next exam. Look, the National Education Policy 2020, it's an incredible, bold vision on paper. It's a thoughtful, detailed blueprint for a massive transformation. But that leaves us with the biggest question of all. This is the vision. So what's it really going to take in terms of money, political will, and on-the-ground execution to make this a reality in every single classroom, in every village and city, across the vast and diverse landscape of India?